This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by OWC, Jay-Z Microphones, PreSonus, Spectra 1964, and API Audio. So get ready to rock.
I think a lot of my decisions personally in a room when I'm cutting have to do a lot with the feel of the room, where the artist's headspace is at, what I can do to facilitate that person kind of getting exactly what they need to say across. It requires technical skills, but it's also very much so paying attention to what's happening and what decisions can you make ahead of time to make all of those things as smooth as possible. That's a lot of it.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. If you feel like the fast pace of computer tech has made your studio Mac obsolete, then think again. OWC is your personal studio tech for memory and speed upgrades, DIY installs, and used Macs perfect for recording and mixing. Why ditch your existing computer when you can take your studio far into the future with the Mac you've already got? Learn how to supercharge your studio and find out how awesome your Mac can be at OWC.com so that you can focus on making great music. If you want a digital audio workstation that will give life to your music, from sketching a new idea to composing, editing, mixing, and mastering a finished record, then you want Studio One from PreSonus. Studio One is easy to use with intuitive drag-and-drop simplicity, making it great for beginners yet flexible and powerful for experienced producers. Whether creating beats, recording a band, or composing a blockbuster film soundtrack, you will find everything you need to create your masterpiece. Download your free version of Studio One Prime and get started now at PreSonus, wherever sound takes you. Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Ike Schultz, a multi-platinum award-winning mixer and tracking engineer based in Los Angeles, originally from Toronto, Canada. He's collaborated and worked on albums for a variety of artists, including Tinashe, Lizzo, Adele, Rihanna, Kanye West, Ariana Grande, Adam Lambert, Widen, Calvin Harris, Dua Lipa, Charlie Puth, Phantogram, and many, many more. Ike worked also at the legendary Larrabee Studios, assisting 9-time Grammy award-winning mixer Manny Marroquin for 3 years, then went on to mix Lizzo's debut release, Coconut Oil, under executive producer Ricky Reed at S.K.A.M Studios. Ike worked on the majority of the album, including the singles Phone and Good as Hell. While at S.K.A.M Studios, Ike worked with DJ Felly Fell, Ty Dolla $ign, Lil Yachty, Whethan, Dram, Imad Royal, and Post Malone. Afterward, he mixed and contributed as a songwriter for multiple feature films for Paramount Pictures Music Department and began working with Grammy award-winning producer and engineer Chris Testa for the Oprah Winfrey Network, MTV, and Facebook's content collaborations with BuzzFeed. In 2018, Ike became the engineer and vocal producer for Emmy-nominated and multi-platinum recording artist Tinashe. He recorded and mixed her 4th solo album, Songs for You, which became the first independently released #1 album on iTunes in the U.S. since 2016. Also, a big thank you to Gabe White at Whisperum for making our introduction. Please welcome Ike Schultz to Recording Studio Rockstars. Ike, are you ready to rock, dude?
Lid, I am ready to rock. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. It's great to have you here on the show.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you just have a really, really impressive discography, and it was a lot of fun to listen to your music and really be kind of knocked out by the sound of it all.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks so much. Glad you got to take a listen. I know we've known each other for plural minutes at this point. You know?
5 minutes. Tell us a little bit more about who you are. And, I kind of read your intro there, but give us briefly in your own words a bit of a backstory to how you got to where you are today.
That was fairly encompassing. But yeah, I guess to give some backstory, I was born in Toronto, but I actually grew up in Rochester, New York. So the vast majority of my growing up through high school, etc., was all up there. And when I was in Rochester, I studied music like at a pretty young age. I started playing piano when I was about, I think, 5 years old or something like that. I was never very good, to be honest. And then when I got to, I think it was 6th grade, I ended up playing drums, and that was the instrument that I probably most identified with. And that was the part that kind of got me more passionate as far as playing music and getting into that sort of thing. I played clarinet, I think starting in, I think 4th grade is when our music program started doing like the classical instruments and things like that.
I love it. We're really doing the early years.
Oh yeah, those early years. But basically I ended up playing clarinet like in 4th grade kind of thing. Played drums in 6th grade, and that really got me through like all of those years. And then eventually I went to Berkeley for drums.
Oh, sweet.
I was there only for a year, and it's just it's a great school, but it just wasn't for me personally. But after that year, I ended up working for a bit, a little bit as a session musician in New York.
When were you at Berkeley? What year?
I believe it was, is it 2010?
Oh, okay. All right.
2011, something like that.
Cool.
But yeah, so I was there for a little bit, and I just didn't even know that recording or anything like that was a career. You just kind of think, hey, music. And a lot of people take that to be like playing music or being in a group or playing an instrument. And there's kind of not really a knowledge of the peripheral careers that you can potentially have in music. So I did that for a while. And then from there, I ended up getting into drum editing when we were doing recording.
Oh, nice.
And then that kind of got me into more of like the technical side of things. But like when I grew up, I was collecting records when I was like in, when I was young with my parents. And so I think I noticed that a lot of the same names started showing up, and it was a lot of vinyl records. So you see like Annie Wallace's name enough times, and you kind of realize that there are these other people who are making things sound the way they do. So basically I ended up studying music like at a younger age. And then from the drum editing, doing that kind of session work got me into the technical side of things.
Now, were you still in Boston at that point, or had you gone?
No, I had already gone back. Yeah, actually, no. So basically the trajectory was I grew up in New York, went to Boston only for a year, went back to New York to play with a guy named Chris Arp. He's known for playing in a band called Psyopus, which is like a very math metal band. But the group that I was in with him was much more of like a progressive rock, like a Jeff Buckley-esque kind of thing.
Nice.
But maybe a little more numerical, let's say. But it was in that kind of vein. It very much so wasn't metal music. But Chris is a very talented guitar player. And so being exposed specifically to his musicianship at a young age was pretty important. So after, I think, like a year to a year and a half of working with him pretty consistently, that got me into the studio, which ended up getting me to start being exposed to the drum editing side of things. And then eventually that turned into going to the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences in Arizona.
Right.
So I went there for about, I think their program's like a year or so, if I'm not mistaken. And from Arizona, I went to LA directly. And then that's when I started really doing the engineering thing in LA more so. And that's how I started at Larrabee.
Right.
And then I was there for 3 years, and then, the rest is history.
L'histoire. That's cool. So drum editing, though, I'm sort of fascinated by that. What was an opportunity that sort of introduced you to the chance to do drum editing? And since drum editing may mean a number of things depending on what decade you were even learning it, what does drum editing mean to you? Like, what was an introduction to drum editing like for you?
So I forget exactly which DAW the Doug, who was the guy at the studio, was using. I honestly might have been one of those. Do you know that, like, I forget exactly what it was, but it was some sort of console-based DAW it wasn't literally hardware, but it was like attached to hardware. I think you ran it off of a couple like rack units, and you had a monitor kind of thing. It had like probably a VGA output, and you were able to do waveforms directly on. It wasn't like an ADAT like tape sort of situation. I forget exactly what it was.
It wasn't radar or something though.
I am, to be honest, very unsure. I was young enough and not experienced enough to really know what I was looking at to that degree. But eventually I think we took those stems out because it was like live click, like audio click kind of editing that this guy was doing in front of me. And eventually those got exported and then put into Pro Tools. And I think I was using, oh my God, I think it was Pro Tools 7 at this point or something like that. But it was really just time aligning and getting the performance to feel better.
It's funny
which was
when
just
you
a lot
say
of
that.
Waveform editing and things like that.
It's funny when you say that because Pro Tools 7 is like feels recent in my timeline, of Pro Tools.
I mean, hey, there's pre-delay compensation, the time adjuster for the 1 to 2 plugins that you have in your session is real. I didn't live through that era, but I am aware of it.
So editing was like taking live drum performances and then just sort of tightening them up and editing between different takes and things like that?
Yeah, it was a combination of like comping different takes, making sure things are in phase, aligning the performance, not just on the grid in the sense of quantizing, but to just get the feel of the rhythm section to be appropriate to the song. Because, sometimes the bass player has like a particular phrasing, and then your edits as far as the drum editing can kind of enhance the rhythm section in the sense of maybe the bass player is playing slightly ahead of the beat. And so if you drag, not necessarily the whole performance, but if you drag certain elements of maybe the backbeat or certain measures or phrases relative to what's happening in like the melody or the counter melody or something like that, you can kind of enhance the rhythm section's support of the rest of the musical content. So it's kind of, there is a technical aspect, of course, which is just waveform editing and the speed and the fluency required to be able to get that stuff in the right spot and level and phase. And there's technical things, but then there's also like the musical decisions where you can place things to enhance the song on a feel level. And that's the part that I enjoyed a lot, was trying to get to the point where you can enhance the performance.
So it was a little less like the experience somebody might have of trying to repair bad drumming and a little bit more of an enhancement?
Yeah, I would say so. It wasn't so much fixing. At least I hope not, because some of them were my performances. But so I hope I didn't have to fix them too much. But yeah, of course, every once in a while there would be a stray hit or something that you might have to dig into a little more and repair. But at that point in time, it was more so finessing the performance element of it to have everything kind of speak together in a more cohesive way. It was only later on where I started to realize that people were doing drum replacement and triggers and things like that. And that requires a lot more. And at that point, you're not really altering the performance at all. That's more of you are either fixing or replacing or enhancing something that's already there. And so that's where things can get a little more technical and probably more tricky, depending. It's just different, honestly.
There's a expression in Nashville where people talk about pocketing sessions and pocketing the band. And that always struck me, where it was like, somebody's taking a band into the studio and you track a bunch of stuff and then you're just trying to, I think it was a level of fixing where it's like just trying to get everything sort of not to fall out of the pocket,
Yeah, that makes, because you don't want it to sound unnatural. I mean, it depends what you're going for. Of course, in some cases, you're doing that for a creative intention. But at least my general approach to people live playing is you don't want to kill the person's natural phrasing, but you do want to make sure that things are tight and in the pocket, as they say.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool.
But
all right, dig it. So that sort of opened a door for you, was getting that first skill set of being able to work with the drums like that?
I think so. It more so fueled the interest and the knowledge that there was something technical going on. Because when I was growing up, I used to record myself. I think like a lot of people, they pick up an instrument and then they realize, oh, hey, like the way that people play this back is recording. Not even really thinking that there's an entire subsector or a profession where people are doing that at a high level. It's more so like, oh, I just want to hear myself play. So I had, some 57s and I think a like a very bad mixer that I borrowed from Steve, who was like a childhood friend of mine.
Steve, who was a childhood friend of mine. I like that.
He was. He let me borrow a pair of small diaphragm condensers. I forget exactly. I think they're Audio Technicas or something like that. He very randomly had a pair of those. And then he was in the robotics club in the school that we went to, and they had like a spare mixer. And he ended up grabbing that, and then I grabbed it from him. And then I think I also grabbed the Pro Tools 7 license, or I think it was an M-powered thing where you had to do, this was like I definitely didn't have an HD rig or anything like that. So I think it was like I had to have an M audio interface or something like that plugged in to the rig to make it work. And then I think I had a mixer very poorly set up with that. And then I had these 57s and these condensers that I only barely knew what I was doing. And then I tried to record drums in the basement. It was like a carpeted basement with not a lot of reflections. So I got away with a lot of things. But it was just a weird little lab where I had absolutely no responsibilities. I mean, I had homework and things, but like, let's be honest, you don't have any responsibilities at that time.
Right.
And so you're just trying to, at some point I was pulling up like Waves SSL channels in Logic at the time. I was trying a bunch of different DAWs. So I had Pro Tools using way too much reverb. Just the amount of reverb that I was putting on things. I was like, this is so cool. There's reverb.
Putting it on the anti-carpet setting.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I just cranked it up. You just really hear the artifacts on the tail of those deverbs. And then I had like a Technics piano that I didn't understand MIDI at that time. So I was just, I think I was just hardwiring that into like a terrible small format mixer and just like I think I was making jazz records at one point. So I was like recording drums, and then I would record like very poorly voiced keyboard bass to it, and then I would play piano on top of it, kind of thing.
Nice. You want the critical details from your microphone to get through to your recording, and the Spectra 1964 101 amplifier provides just that, with unequaled headroom, low noise, and a linear output irrespective of transient audio peaks. Used by Tom Dowd, Muscle Shoals, Stax Studios, and The Record Plant on records by ZZ Top, Aerosmith, Bruce Springsteen, and John Lennon, Spectra 1964 brings that same incredible sound to your studio with the new STX 600 mic pre with built-in comp limiter. Start making classic records again at Spectra1964.com. Are you sick of microphones that make your music sound harsh and brittle? The new Amethyst mic by Jay-Z Microphones brings you a rich, warm tone with perfect detail using the golden capsule technology. Resulting from 30 years of microphone design, the Amethyst is hand-built using carefully selected parts with Class A discrete circuitry, extremely low self-noise, and an advanced shock mount to make sure your recordings sound awesome. This is my voice on the Amethyst right now. Use the limited time coupon ROCKSTARS to get 50% off the Amethyst mic at jzmic.com. But now, before we did this, you were talking about, you've come a long way with the computers you're using. Tell us about that new computer you just said you were getting set up.
Yeah. So I've been in the process of setting up a new Mac Pro. One of the, I think, late 2019, right, was the release date for them. And it's a very interesting machine. It's the thing that I noticed in particular was when you open up the machine, some of like review channels and like tech reviewers have mentioned this, but there's this little slot that it's like a little slot that, how do I say it? It's
like an Apple design detail kind of thing.
Yeah. So basically, the PCIe cards, like normally on a machine, they slot in, and then there's nothing really picking up the slack on the front end. So heavier cards and things can kind of sag in the slot a little bit, kind of like a cable that doesn't have any stress relief on it. So there's this little tab that kind of you can click down, and it basically holds up and supports the front end of the PCIe cards. It's just like a little thing that you don't really see in a lot of PC manufacturers, but it's a very Apple move. The computer is very well built. There's like the little lattice pattern on the front.
It's the crazy honeycomb look to the front of it and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Which I've heard is useful for the acoustics and like the airflow as far as the cooling and everything like that.
The acoustics, so our records will sound better because of that? That's awesome.
Of course. Yeah, that's exactly how it works.
Now, what about the processing power in it? That's supposed to be pretty immense, right?
Yeah, it is. I think they're using, I think it's Intel workstation class processors. You can go all the way up to, I think, 28 core, if I'm not mistaken. So your multi-thread capability is pretty intense. Although AMD's Ryzen chips are really kind of changing the game as far as the computer landscape is concerned. They have pretty recently put out like an entire series of chips. Unfortunately, for people who are using macOS or anything like that, that is not really an option. And I know that Apple's relationship with Intel kind of made it so that they're using the Intel workstation processors. But I'll be completely honest, for music in particular, because this machine is often targeted towards people who are working at Pixar or DreamWorks doing really heavy animation. And so they require things like afterburner cards and like an intense amount of graphical processing. And just they're a very GPU heavy workload. Whereas in audio, to be totally honest, we've gotten to a point where, of course, having a nicer computer is just great to have as far as the general speed of using it as an operator. And especially if you're working with, like, let's say you're a composer or you're working with a bunch of string libraries, or you have a lot of VSTs or virtual instruments.
Yeah, and virtual instruments.
That's what I meant. Clearly a format I don't use often as a Pro Tools guy. But yeah, if you're using a lot of like virtual instruments and doing a lot of composition, and you could almost load, I think the RAM on this guy tops out at, is it a terabyte of RAM? Something ridiculous.
A lot. All I know is when I went and priced it out on the Apple website, I was like, well, I'm going to clearly want the most of this, and I'll need to max that, and I'll max that. And it was, next thing I know, it was a $25,000 computer.
Yeah,
and I was
that sounds about right. It's definitely like a car level computer, depending on which configuration you get. I'll be honest, though, the nice part about music is that we're very not, our workflows aren't very GPU dependent.
Right.
So as long as you have a pretty middle ground processor, and don't quote me too much because I'm definitely not ultra fluent on the technical side, but to my knowledge, Pro Tools can access it can use the hyperthreads, like i.e., let's say you have a 6-core computer, it shows up as 12 threads in the system usage portion of Pro Tools. So you can use the hyperthreading and the multiple threads, but I find that I think it's each audio stream uses a single core. So like, let's say you have a master channel that's like many plugins deep. I think a lot of the CPU pressure is happening on a one core distributed through 2 threads. So like, have you ever had like a Pro Tool session where you see the system usage and there's like two threads, like i.e. one core that is like significantly being used more, and then the rest of them are kind of distributing like the CPU pressure?
Maybe. I mean, I think so. Usually I see a whole bunch I have 12 in this one, and it usually looks like a little mountain sort of on its side. So as it goes towards the middle cores, then it seems to be using more, but the edges less or something like that. I don't know. My take on it is always as simple as this, like, am I working fast or am I working slow? The text changes so much over the years. You get a little bit tired of trying to memorize every detail behind under the hood,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. As an operator, like, I enjoy researching and just kind of learning about the technical side of things. But at the end of the day, the computer is really nice just because it allows you to get things done quicker.
There you go.
The
That's what
workflow
we
on
like
it
to
is
hear.
excellent. Oh yeah, that's the part that really matters. I mean, the other part is like interesting and fun to talk about and has a lot of numbers in it. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's actually like a really great machine for getting work done.
So you've already been working on the newest Mac Pro, and it's screaming for you?
Yeah, I'm in the process of configuring it. So I had a good time where I had to basically port over a lot of legacy software in some sessions, so that if we ever needed to go back, things would be ready to go without any downtime. So it was porting over a lot of like RTES plugins and making sure things were configurable. So it's a lot of like configuring at the moment, but I have tinkered with it a little bit, and it is pretty immense, the horsepower on it in general.
So are you coming from a system that was still rocking Pro Tools 10 with the RTAS plugins and things like that?
Yeah, it depends where I work, because a lot of people are still using those legacy systems. Sometimes it's just a matter of they have the legacy system and all of their software is already set up and ready to go, and I'm not in a position to change it based on the room that I'm in. But oftentimes a lot of people are on those legacy systems still just because they've invested so much in TDM hardware.
Yeah.
If you're in a hybrid or an analog-based studio, some of those studios have invested, I don't know how many thousands of dollars in the amount of I/O just to get 80 channels out and in from a desk. Just converters wise. Yeah. And then you're getting into the point where they're all using DigiLink cables and your computer's already set up with like an HD3 or a 5 system. You'd be surprised how many people are still using like Core and Excel cards and things like that, not even HDX systems still. So for those studios, it's kind of whatever works. A lot of that is just based on what they're using in the infrastructure that they've already invested in. Because, for someone who's either mostly or primarily in the box, an upgrade is as simple as just buying the new program, or at this point, subscribe, kind of like Creative Cloud style. But for those people, it's a pretty easy jump. Hey, I can right-click commit now, and I have, certain things. And then the gap between HD versions of Pro Tools and non-HD has changed quite a bit, right? Like certain automation modes and VCAs in particular used to be something that was exclusive to HD, or what was it, the production toolkit, right, where it's basically like HD without the cards, and then they went into the HD native situation, and now there's almost exact parity between them, besides some, I think, like HDX card features and stuff like that. But yeah, switching, there is a lot of people who are still using Pro Tools 10 though, so things like delay compensation, your 4095 samples, and auto-tune 5s and things like that are things that you kind of have to consider. And then
the Pro Tools 10 was always known as the Swiss Army knife of Pro Tools because you could do AAX plugins and RTAS plugins still. And so you were like, you could still, and the new engine sounded better and all that. And now, of course, I'm mixing on Pro Tools 12 and, Ultimate. So I'm sort of up to date with it. And it's pretty, there's so many new features in there. I haven't even figured them all out yet,
Yeah, it's amazing how far it's come, because I remember when I was like early in LA, it was, I think Pro Tools 11 maybe had come out or something like that, but the vast majorities of studios were using the older format towers and Pro Tools 10 and, like HD3 or 5 rigs and Magma chassis and PCI cards and like all that stuff. So
sweet.
Yeah, it's very different because you had to think about, you could definitely you could have overages as far as your sample delay. Like time adjusters were still a thing that you had to think about.
Oh, yeah. I'm so glad I don't have to use time adjusters that much. Now I just use them for sort of lining up a bass DI to a bass amp, and that's about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's you're using it, literally just to adjust phase between two sources or something like that, not like actually fixing your manual delay compensation, essentially.
Ike, tell us about your studio now. Do you have a regular room that you like to work out of? Is there a studio that you're mixing out of all the time?
Yeah, I have a spot Modadasa that I mix out of at the moment. So basically my rig is, I would like to say a well-treated room. I'm still an NS10 Bryson 4B guy personally. Mm-hmm. So I have basically like a stockpile of dead stock NS10 drivers.
I just blew mine.
I have. Oh, yeah?
Switched because I blew it.
Yeah, I think I have 5 pairs on ice, as the kids say. But yeah, so I have that, and then I think I have a spare set of tweeters, and then I use a Bryson 4B, and that is a combo that I've grown accustomed to. Yeah. And then I've actually been using the KRK V8s as well. Tinashe has a pair of those, and so I got used to the sound signature just from her room, working on them. And then I got a pair myself. And And I've been liking them. They're different, but I spend the most of my time on the NS10s. And then I also have a pair of HS8s, which I like for a different reason. But I've had those for a while. They're kind of like my I don't know if they're my secondary or tertiary monitor. But yeah, I'm primarily on NS10s.
And is that what you've been mixing on this whole time? So like we got some great records that you've done to talk about on this, like working with Lizzo and Tinashe and what were some of the others? Were Birds of Prey and then Malu.
Oh yeah.
Trevejo, if I'm saying her name right.
Yes.
Are those all
Malu
records
Trevejo?
that you would typically mix on NS10s?
Yeah, I do. I'll listen in a variety of places, but a lot of the decision making is made on NS10s personally.
Very cool.
I'm pretty old school in that regard.
Do you like to rock a subwoofer as well?
It depends on the room. I like a very light amount of sub, more so for, I don't know if it's ear fatigue, but it just kind of, it's not really for sub information. It's more so just to kind of fill out the center a little bit and make them ever so slightly less fatiguing, but it depends on the room. Some rooms I don't like a sub with my NS10s, and then on some rooms it's nice to fill it out, but it kind of depends on the acoustics of the space. At the moment, I am not using one.
So now have you sort of trained yourself to judge low end just on a pair of NS10s, even without a sub?
Yeah, you can. It's, of course I like to check in different places just to kind of reference what I'm hearing. But yeah, a lot of the sub information is it's not literally happening in the mid range, but you can hear a lot of what things are doing in the sub range on the mids of the NS10s.
Very interesting.
Like
cool.
where like 100 and 150 get colored on NS10s have a lot to do with like the punch and the sub that you're getting. But I do reference. It depends on the material too, because some stuff is very sub heavy and there's a lot of things happening at the bottom. So intelligibility wise, I like to check on different things. But yeah, no, you'd be surprised what you can hear on NS10s once you get used to them.
Well, that's cool.
A lot of it is what monitor in general.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely. I'm going to definitely dig into that deeper with you here in the back half of the show. If you're ready to upgrade your studio to the famous sound of API's large format consoles, then you're ready for the Box, a small format console featuring the same analog circuitry and original 2520 op-amp design that has made API famous for 50 years. Record through 8 world-class mic pre-channels, mix through 24 smooth-as-glass faders, and blend mics, analog effects, and parallel compression at the speed of electrons rather than the speed of your computer latency. Upgrade your home studio to legendary status with The Box from APIaudio.com. Let me start by asking you about your experience working with Manny Marroquin too. What were some of the things that you learned from him at your time there?
Honestly, a lot of it had to do with the business in particular. There's just a degree of professionalism, and the kind of work that's coming through Larrabee in particular teaches you a lot about the pace and the level of organization and file management and client services and a lot of that other peripheral stuff about the business. Of course, I learned quite a bit as far as just the technical side of engineering and just watching the person mix in general and preparing the sessions and seeing how things are laid out. Something that I learned at Larrabee in particular was just a lot of the analog workflow because I had worked at Analog Studios before, but that is one of the few places that is still primarily like a desk-based studio. I mean, I think every room has an SSL in it. So it was a lot of, I think it's like 3K consoles, and there was a G at one point. And then when I was there, Bill Cheney's spot ended up becoming, I think, Studio 5 is what they were calling, Studio 5 of Larrabee, and that had a duality in it. And so it's just a lot of patch bay work, and you kind of realize that everything in Pro Tools is basically a console.
Right.
And so you learn things that sometimes I feel that people who are exclusively in the digital domain, not through any fault of their own per se, but because they've only been exposed to the digital side of things, there are things that as soon as you work in a analog setting, you realize like there's a routing is the one that comes to mind in particular. In the digital world, you could technically, if you wanted to, you could send off of something and then double aux something and then, I don't know, EQ two things and have them phase with each other and then have them sum to another aux. That's then all going to a master kind of thing. And if you press spacebar, it works, right? It technically plays back and you could hear it and it's fine. But it's that kind of thing where as soon as you hold two patch cables and you go to do something like that, you're like, oh, of course that doesn't make sense. Like, of course, there's a signal flow to this and some things make sense and other things seem ridiculous. And so it's very different when you're literally patching cables or, patching up an entire room, for example. Your fundamentals get really strong. Mm-hmm. I find, not to say that you need that experience to get your fundamentals to be very sound, but you get a lot of fundamentals as far as gain staging, signal flow, just the operations of a console in particular, and that definitely helps you out whether you're on a console or not.
Now,
so that's something that just comes to mind.
What were some of the things you remember about going from, the school scene to entering into a professional studio, and how precisely your own musical taste matched up with the music that was getting recorded at this new place where you had this opportunity to learn all these great skills? Do you remember feeling like, wow, the music that I love totally matches the music that's getting done here? Do you remember feeling like there's a bit of a transition as you're coming up through that?
I think it kind of depends because, like, me personally, I'm the kind of guy who listens to a lot of jazz music, classical music, alternative rock. And then I guess maybe prior to that experience, I really like everything though. And I think that's kind of important, is you kind of have to diversify your tastes. Like, you have to be very open to a lot of different types of music, especially when you're doing things like mixing or working in music in this kind of faculty, because it's just, you're going to get exposed to a lot of things that you might have a personal taste to some degree, but you also have to kind of be a professional in the sense where no matter what's put in front of you, you have to treat it not the same in the sense that the song is the same, but the same as far as your approach to it in general. Yeah, you have to treat like a Justin Bieber record the same as that indie artist that no one has ever heard of kind of thing, as far as like your ability to try to take the song as far as it can go. And there's like a professionalism required with that. And I actually enjoyed Larrabee in the sense where it was a lot of pop music that I listened to on a work level, because I like to know what things are sounding like currently. And it's very well done music, but I think that there's a difference between music that you on a personal level like would go home and enjoy like by yourself in a not work scenario. And then there's music that you can appreciate because of how well done it is. And I think that's an important distinction. Only because a lot of times I'll listen to a song and it might not be the kind of thing that I would jam out to at home, like on my own private time, but I can 100% appreciate how well done it is.
Yeah, I had that same experience.
Fidelity. Yeah, it's just like from the fidelity to the sonics to maybe the production or an element of the arrangement, or there's something that you can take away from it that you can try to be curious about and learn. But I think that there is a distinction between that and, like the 1954 Miles Davis record that you put on your record player at home.
Right.
To kind of like hang out with. So yeah, I think that I learned to appreciate a lot more the subtleties and the production elements of pop music. And so that got me into that kind of music in a different way. I actually really enjoy that kind of stuff in general. Like in my spare time, I do like listening to a lot of pop music. And I know that pop is a very encompassing word.
Right, it's kind of broad.
Yeah, it's very broad. I mean, pop music could be anything from X Ambassadors to, it depends on who you're talking to, but, there's Drake. there's so many genres that kind of encompass pop music. Like, what is pop music? Like, Selena Gomez is a pop artist, and Justin Bieber's a pop artist. And
think of pop music these days as programmed music with a singer on top,
That's fair. Do you consider Alabama Shakes to be a pop group?
I don't, but no, I guess I don't. I don't.
No,
really.
I agree with where you're coming from. I was just asking.
Yeah,
it's interesting that there's a distinction. Yeah, pop music does have a particular flavor, right? Like Taylor Swift is clearly a pop artist, and a lot of it has to do with the kind of the programming elements,
right?
And the song form and the arrangement. So, it's
I guess
interesting.
It's that programming thing that makes me think of pop music. It's like if you've got 808 bass and some finger snaps on it, and a female vocal over the top, you are very likely, you might just be pop, I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's cool. There's so many genres. And, when I started out here, the opportunities were like, there's going to be a lot of opportunities that really, we're making country music. And so that was the same thing for me. It's like somebody who comes from I thought Nirvana was pretty cool background and indie rock. You learn quickly that you can appreciate the craft of making records and the professionalism, even if it's a style of music that you weren't going to go listen to outside of the studio. But then it's funny because you begin to listen to the music, then you begin to listen to it outside of the studio. You start to appreciate it more.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there's especially working in a studio environment, or like in my case, that particular environment where you're just exposed to a lot of records. I mean, it must have been, the time I was there, it had to be over 1,000 records at least.
Wow.
Like minimum. So,
because you're mixing a different thing every day, probably.
Oh yeah, multiple things depending on what day it is. Yeah. So it's the kind of thing where, you walk into a room and you're listening to pop music one day, and then another day it's distorted 808s, and another day it's like a soaring vocal ballad over a bed of strings that are perfectly arranged by someone who's very talented. And so you're exposed to a lot of different music. And I was lucky because as you're prepping a lot of this music, you get to appreciate and understand the like the components in the arrangement. Mm-hmm. Just because by being in a mixing studio, you do see all of the production elements. And so you can kind of see how someone assembled the song. Not necessarily their workflow as far as the creative process of writing it or anything like that, but you can very much so see and understand the arrangement. It's almost like a great arrangement mixes itself a little bit. Mm-hmm. That's been said before. I'm definitely not the first one to say that. But it's amazing how much a good production and a great arrangement takes the song to a place without anyone really touching anything on a technical level, even a creative technical level. It's amazing how much that does to the function of a song.
Now, do you remember, so are you also producing now, right? You are.
I do, yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And do you remember going back into the studio to do some production on your own, having discovered some of those things you just described? And
absolutely.
And do you remember what that experience was like? Was there a thing where you were like, oh my God, I'm gonna delete this part or anything like that you experienced?
Yeah, I'm trying to like pinpoint some sort of aha moment, like some magical direct. I can't really think of one, to be honest, but what I have learned is that something that I think the people maybe don't think about quite as much who are trying to pursue like the technical engineering careers is that at the end of the day, what you're working on is songs, mm-hmm. specifically. And the entire music industry is based on songs. Like nothing is more important than the song. So I feel like a lot of people think, hey, if I have this magical plugin, or if mm-hmm. I have, some sort of thing I
want a magical plugin.
Yeah, like A plus B equals this thing. And it's really not so much about that as serving the song. And I think the understanding how songs work is required for this kind of job. I'm not saying that you have to be someone who can play Chopin on a piano or something like that, or you have to be this virtuoso, unbelievably proficient, or even music theory heavy. Like you don't need to know what chord scales are or what your modes and your inversions and things like that necessarily to be like a music engineer is, or honestly even a music producer in some senses. But I think what really matters is understanding like how the form and function of a song works.
Yeah.
Like knowing things like bars and beats and time signatures and verses and pre-choruses and choruses, and how all of those parts function with each other to say the story of a song is super important, whether you're a technical person or someone who's doing a more creative job as far as like a producer or a writer or something along those lines. It's very, very important to understand the craft of a song, whether you are actually like writing the lyrics of a song or even performing the song or doing something like mixing the song.
So tell us the story about working with Lizzo, because Lizzo's awesome. I'm actually, we have something in common. Both you and I have recorded Good as Hell, but mine was her performing it in my radio studio down at Bonnaroo at the Hay Bale studio. So she was
really?
probably,
oh, that's awesome.
I was probably by mixing, I mean, I was bringing up a stereo fader and then her vocals. But I was probably working with your tracks there, and it sounded killer. And it's such a great, super fun song.
Yeah, it is a great song.
But Lizzo's songs too, like I don't know what her personal knowledge is of the instrumentation and stuff like that, but she's got clearly has this great sense of song, like you're describing, where it's like, this is the verse, this is the chorus, this is the hook, this is like this thing you've never heard before, but you're going to remember it after you hear it this time,
Yeah, Lizzo and her whole team are super talented in general. Lizzo's actually a very proficient musician. She plays flute like on a classical level.
Oh, cool.
Like she could play flute better than I can. I mean, I'm not good at clarinet or anything, but she is very good at flute. Actually, I think the intro to Coconut Oil is her on flute.
Oh, cool.
For example, that flute solo in the beginning is her. She's very, very good. She can do her trills and, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, she's a very talented musician, and I forget where I read it, but she mentioned something, I think, along, not to me personally, but along the lines of the flute really helped her as a vocalist because it gives you a sense of melody and like phrasing and singing. And I kind of get where she's coming from with that. Just because it's an instrument that lives in that, what is it, clarion register? It's a very lyric, like it's a very vocal instrument, kind of like it's like a wind, like violin or like a lead guitar. It lives in that voicing. And so knowing an instrument like that, I think can help you quite a bit as a vocalist. I mean, not even just a vocalist, as a musician in general. She's just very musically sound. Yeah. Of course, she's a fantastic vocalist and has a really nice, the personality comes across in the music very well. And she is very good at singing, and is just a great performer in particular, which helps tremendously.
Yeah, well, I think about also the song "Phone," which is just so cool. It's such a great hook, and it's like, how am I supposed to get home? And it's a very clever use of lyric and melody, or maybe not a whole lot of melody in that one.
Yeah, it's her music is interesting because not every arrangement, and Ricky, her producer, Ricky Reed, who we used to go by Wallpaper. I mean, he's done a bunch of stuff for like a variety of different people, like 21 Pilots Ride, and he did Jason Derulo's Talk Dirty, was like one of his early productions. But I mean, he did like what's that Pitbull song? Fireball. He did Fireball with Pitbull, and I think there's a few other artists on there. But yeah, he's been steadily producing stuff in general, and also has his own work like as an artist. Like he has a few albums that is like I Am Ricky Reed, and it's just like his music, and it's all really well done. And he's really good at arrangement in particular. He's super good at producing, but yeah, his arrangements are excellent. And so kind of the combination of Lizzo as a vocalist with like her styling and her attitude and the songwriters that they have. I know that Ricky has a team of like some really talented songwriters. And just that entire group is just a really good, because he has a label, Nice Life. And Lizzo was his first artist on Nice Life. And I think Good as Hell was 2015 when I was still at Larrabee. And then I left between 2015 and 16. And then that's when I think me and Ricky met at a Nice Life event or something like that. And then that's how her first, I think it was EP, right? Yeah, her first EP, like her first Atlantic release kind of happened that way. And I like met her at I think it was like not a Taco Tuesday, but it was like you're having tacos or something like that. And yeah, it was before anyone really knew who she was, but you could tell off the bat that she was really talented. And I think that's important because I think in music right now, a lot of things are very
not talent.
They're very. I don't want to say not talent based, but it's very momentary. Yeah. There's a lot of the world we live in is very trend based, and there's a lot of like quick moments. Yeah. And I think some people think, hey, if I just get that one like SoundCloud hit or something like that, in a year I can just like make my whole career kind of happen and I can become this thing. And I'm not saying that doesn't ever happen, but I think that the reality of it, I feel like the framing and the way that music is kind of projected sometimes makes it seem like, oh, it's just like one hit wonder and like this just happened overnight. And the reality is like Lizzo's been doing this for I think 6 years, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Good as Hell came out in 2015 and it's charting now.
Yeah, so, when it came in and she performed that in my Hay Bale studio at Bonnaroo, I didn't know anything about her. And she came in and she did that track and we were all just like bouncing around in the control room. And that's the only track we sang for the rest of our time down there. We're all just going like, toss my hair back, check my nail. Mm-hmm. Baby, how you feeling? Feeling good as hell.
It's a great song.
That's what everybody wants to do. Everybody wants to try and do the high note at the end there. And nobody can except for Lizzo.
No, it's a fun song. And it's like, it hits a nice balance between like, it's like a positive message, but she's clearly like a very talented musician. And it has like a quirky quality and it has a certain type of attitude that's very Lizzo. She comes across very authentically just because I think the production and the arrangement and like the quality of the workmanship, like across the board, the songwriting, the production. Ethan, who's Ricky's engineer, is very talented. And all of those people put together make this. It's funny because she's always been that talented and has always been great. It just took a long time for that exposure to happen. But it's that kind of thing where if you're talented and you have great songs, a lot of that other stuff just happens.
Yeah, well,
it might take more time, but it's a lot of the people who end up being successful have been doing it for a very long time, and they're very sound in their musical skills.
Yeah, every overnight success is a 10 years of hard work. And you bring up a good point, which is just that reminder of the power of having a really great team of people working together and how a lot of great things are created through collaboration and great people working together. Well, let's take a break for a minute. And when we come back in, we'll kick it with the jam session, but we're going to dig into some more questions about you working with Tinashe, and we'll probably talk more about Lizzo and other records you're doing. And Rockstar's a reminder that I've got links to Ike's fantastic work in the show notes. So please click through, go to the blog post and check it out. There should be a video player there for you too, so you can just go listen to a bunch of these tracks. And we'll see you guys in just a minute for the jam session. You know what it feels like when inspiration hits and you want to capture your great song idea, but then the studio gets in the way and it's just no fun anymore. Wouldn't it feel awesome if you could simplify the process of producing your music from inspiration to final masterpiece? PreSonus Studio One is a powerful digital audio workstation that helps you compose your music with a complete collection of virtual instruments for keyboards and drums, MIDI tools for hip-hop, EDM, and film, a flexible sketchpad with chord charts and key recognition for songwriting and arranging, and classic effects pedals and amp simulators for guitar and bass. With 37 high-quality effects plugins, integrated Melodyne, and drag and drop flexibility, you can easily edit and polish your mixes. And Studio One is the only DAW with a built-in mastering studio so that you can take your record from writing to radio ready all in one place. Download your free version of Studio One Prime and get started now at PreSonus, wherever sound takes you. If you're using a Mac in your recording studio and you're tired of feeling like the studio setup you worked so hard to create is becoming obsolete too quickly, then Otherworld Computing is the solution for you. OWC can help keep your existing Mac and studio current and relevant so that you can make great music. Whether you need to upgrade your RAM, install an SSD, add more connectivity, or simply find a great used Mac, you can get the most mileage out of your studio with OWC. Offering a vast library of DIY install videos, 24/7 friendly support, and free shipping in the US on most items over $49, there's no need to get frustrated when you can achieve the speed to create and the capacity to dream at OWC.com. Hey, Rockstars, we're back now for the jam session. My guest today is Ike Schultz, joining us from LA. We're going to talk about working with Tinashe, Lizzo, making some amazing sounding hip hop and I guess pop records. Now we've sort of defined it. But anyway, Ike, you ready to jam?
Yes, I am.
Awesome, dude. Well, so I want to talk about vocals with you for just a minute. So Lizzo's got a great voice. I know that when I recorded her in my Haybell studio, I just defaulted to an SM7B. And I think you said you're using that for your voice now. And in fact, another artist that you had worked with was Adele. And again, I was very fortunate to have her come into my studio. Same thing. I just used an SM7 because that was what I had. But what do you remember about finding the right vocal mic for Lizzo? Were you involved in recording her vocals? And if the answer is no, we can just jump right to Tinashe because I'm pretty sure you are very involved in that, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Lizzo, I didn't personally record. I think to my knowledge, that's mostly Ethan, who's one of Ricky's guys. Okay. I'm not exactly sure what their setup is. I do know that Ethan does a very good job, though. Yeah, with her vocals. Yeah, by the time that I get them, both from Ethan and Ricky, they're very well done ahead of time. Okay, but well, no, I personally don't record her.
Let's jump to one that you're more familiar with. How about Tinashe?
Yes. So I've been her engineer for the last, I think, it's almost 2 years now, but I think a year and a half or so. So personally, that's where I do most of like the vocal recording side of my work. For her, it's really just a U87 going into a Neve DPA, like the 1073 front end without the EQ. And then that's just going into some Apogee converters going into a computer. And that's pretty much it. There's
no compression during the recording process?
Yeah, no CL1B. I usually ride the output trim is what I tend to do. But she's actually a very good vocalist. Mm-hmm. And so she has really good mic technique. And so there's not a lot of variability even without the compressor. So aside from certain passages where she's kind of like transitioning from one voice to another and is just projecting a little more on a dynamic range level, everything's pretty consistent. So yeah, I personally don't use a compressor on the way in for her.
Okay, because that's fascinating. Because, when I listen to her voice, there will be lines that start going up the scale, and then it's just like pretty quickly you're on a powerful upper register. And I thought to myself, I was like, man, Ike is just like every record that you shared with me, the vocals are just nailed, where it's like, there's no, I'm so used to trying to record a voice like that. And I might do pretty good, but I always run into some problem, And I'm listening to yours, I'm like, man, it's just like, it's never crapping out. It's never getting harsh. It always seems like it's just right in control, which is, again, that sign of that professionalism.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, a lot of it has to do on the just on the recording side of things. It's pretty intuition based. Like you kind of get into a swing of things, and eventually you start to, because the lucky part about that situation is I'm often there for the writing process as well. So like the workflow of a song will be, by the time they're getting the melodies and then eventually sequencing those to kind of have like a rough arrangement and writing lyrics to the sections and things like that. By the time she's cutting, I do know the arrangement of the song to a degree. And I kind of, in my head at least, I'm thinking of the passages that are going to be stronger or more chest voice driven versus like a falsetto or more of a low thing. And depending on that, like I kind of in my head have a general idea of like what the presetting should be for the different sections. So like, let's say a song is getting written and there's like maybe a producer that's provided an instrumental or made one from scratch. And then the songwriters and her do melodies and then kind of pick out something for the verse, for example. By the time that section is looping and they're writing lyrics to it, I kind of in my head know that like, oh, hey, and this is just, it's weird because I don't think about it very often, but now that we're speaking about it, like I'll think in my head, okay, this is a low register verse. And so there's going to be a lot of conversational lyric driven topics, and it's going to be this kind of register, probably in this kind of dynamic. Mm-hmm. And so I think to myself, like I generally know where I want the pre to be. I might crank up the pre. On the Neve, it's going to be like 5 dB increments, right? So we'll crank that up, and then I kind of have a good judgment on the output, so where I can like gain stage things, so that like pushing the color of the pre on the front end, and then having the proper signal going into the front end of the converter, you can kind of like get a sweet spot.
Yeah.
And it's hard to describe, but once you hear the sweet spot, it's very obvious that you're there, kind of thing. And and based on the sections with the way we're recording, it might be, I know that once we get to the second half of the verse, I might have to either back off on the trim or maybe click something down. But again, the person's a really good vocalist, so they're very good at keeping their dynamics consistent without me doing anything, to be honest. So that's kind of the luxury. Like my job is made much easier when the person is a great performer. And right. So because the dynamics are already consistent off the bat, what I have to do, I would consider to be subtle and minimal to get those things consistent.
And maybe even fun, because it sounds great.
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah, that's the thing. Like comping like a Tinashe vocal is very fun because it's pretty much every take is good. It's not a situation where you need to find a take that is good or a take where the note is correct. Yeah. It's you're more so deciding things like, and that's what happens when you reach like a certain level of musicianship. And I'm in a very fortunate position to be able to work with people who are talented like that, where you're getting to a point where comping a vocal from her, for example, is no longer this note is the right pitch or this note is pronounced correctly. Mm-hmm. It's more so the phrasing of this line in the lyric most closely projects the kind of attitude and the lyrical content that this person is saying and the timing. Yeah. So you choose things for musical decisions as opposed to, I don't want to say fixing, but with some people who are maybe like some vocalists require a little more work than others. Not to take away from their performance or their abilities or their talent or anything like that, but it's just some people require a little bit more work on the back end and posts. Mm-hmm. And once the performance is great, everything down the line becomes so much easier.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's not a compressor on the way in, at least at the moment. A CL1B would be nice. I do really like those, especially for vocals. Morning. Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I do want one of those. Yeah.
But that's fascinating because I think a lot of us might be listening and going, what? You're not like trying to get the perfect compression when you're recording? And I have heard people talk about recording vocals with no compression. Is it an enabling technique? In other words, does it sort of free you up to do more things, or does it make it easier for the singer, or is it just simply the case of not having one of those compressors handy and so therefore not using it?
I mean, I guess it's sort of a combination of all three. There's sort of repercussions to not having one that can be positive depending on how you use it. So in that situation, there isn't a compressor. But that's good because you can apply a relatively liberal amount of compression on the way in. Of course, the thing you have to keep in mind is latency, but most of the dynamic-based plugins, like not time effects or anything like that, you pretty much have no latency on the way in. And
so you're saying go through a digital, like a plug-in compressor and actually print it to tape or to Pro Tools that way?
Yeah, but I mean, that being said, it'll be printed to Pro Tools without compression, right? But the monitor path will have a compressor and effects and things like that in it, so that the vocalist is hearing their vocal with compression, and you're hearing it, of course, like on your end with compression. But the signal that you're actually like recording into doesn't have any compression married to it, and that's interesting because you can make your decisions through the processing. And yeah, I mean, to be honest though, if I was using a compressor on the way in, it would be not very heavy settings anyway, because I think I don't like using them as a crutch personally. It's really easy to kind of set and forget with a vocal compressor. And I mean, don't get me wrong, if you have a really nice one, it is doing a lot of like, I would say auto level riding, I guess would be maybe like a way, like when the person's transitioning between different passages that are different dynamic levels, it kind of keeps that consistency. But I mean, I'll be honest, if you're really listening and I think the gain stage between the output of the pre and the input of your converter is super important. As long as you have that in the sweet spot, I mean, you're good in general.
Yeah. Well, so what would be some good choices for compressor plug-in chains to try out during the recording process, where you're like, this is do this much, but don't do this much because it'll be too much, kind of thing?
It does sort of depend on the genre of music and the vocalist you're working with. I know that's kind of like not the most fun answer, but stuff that I think is good in general is honestly like an R comp from Waves. I know that's like a very basic plugin, but it works very well.
Not even RVox, but R comp.
Yeah, RVox is great too. That is it is amazing how good that compressor still is. Although I like RVox in general because it kind of pops out the vocal a little bit. It kind of pushes it ever so slightly forward.
A little bit of EQ or harmonic distortion going on there or something.
Yeah, it has this thing where it just adds a little bit of, I don't want to say presence, but it's like if you ever need a vocal just to be a little bit more forward, RVox is still a very good tool for that job. Yeah. Compressor that I really do like though is it's the Mic DSP, is it the MC404, I believe? It's been around for a while. I think it used to be called like the MC2000 or something like that in the RTAS world, but I think it's the 404. And they make, I think, a 202 or something like that. But the 404 is the 4-band. It's kind of like a Mic DSP C4 to a degree, but I do like the kind of color that compressor has in particular. That's a nice one.
Yeah, it says, I'm looking online right now, it says the MC2000 was the multi-band compressor, so maybe that was the predecessor to that.
Yeah, or maybe they kind of like I think maybe now with a different format, there's like sub-modules at this point.
Yeah,
so, I do really like that.
I use Mic DSP myself, but I know they're great, so.
Yeah, I don't use them often, but that particular compressor I find nice in particular. I know there's a few guys who use it. But yeah, I do really like that for vocals just in general. Effects wise, I really do like the Lexicon series, the PCM stuff that they make.
Yep.
Yeah, the PCM verbs are really nice.
I like those ones a lot. What are some verbs that you might be inclined to use on a vocal? I mean, I know reverb on vocals sometimes can be tricky. Sometimes, and I guess it depends on the conversation in the song, but sometimes delay is the reverb that you need on a vocal, right?
Yeah, I think again, a lot of it depends on the context that the vocal's in, because some songs just with a faster tempo, like a lot of those, like the timing effects kind of like affect the movement of things. Yep. I know it's like a little more conceptual, but it's kind of like the timing of the vocals and I guess like the length of the effects relative to the tempo of the song can really affect the movement of the vocal. And that can really like alter your feel as far as timing is concerned. Yeah. Pre-delay is pretty just important in general to give the front end of the vocal space, and the amount of it kind of it's variable depending on what sort of song you're in as far as the context. Sometimes just no reverb depending on what kind of vocal it is. Like you were saying, a very well timed or well placed delay. Set in a really nice frequency range can kind of fill out that sense of space or the like elongation of the vocal's wetness in general. But yeah, it kind of depends. Doublers can be used to kind of like give a sense of space.
Yeah. Do you like to widen a vocal or do anything to sort of make it sound a little wider than life?
A lot of it depends on what kind of song it is, because some songs are very like dry and in your face, and both like what the stylizing of the song is and like the production and what they're saying, kind of, it makes sense to have something like very relatively dry and in your face and like present and forward. But then other times with vocalists, you know, kind of having, depending on the context and the timing and like just the arrangement, it's very subjective, like how you want to apply effects and things like that. But yeah, I think like doublers that I like in general, like the DMX 1580 S, like the AMS one. That's a fantastic, like it does the H3000, what is it, 619 preset, like the micro shift, the
910s and the 949 and all that.
Yeah, like, you know, it for those who aren't familiar, it just basically takes the vocal and then like has a doubling of the signal that pans left and right, and then one is slightly up in pitch and one is slightly down in pitch, and both of them are delayed X amount, and then it kind of gives you like a doubling widening effect.
And you can kind of fake that out with some stock plugins too. So
sure.
In Pro Tools, just the pitch plugin, I used to use that where I just put it in stereo mode and pitch one down a tiny bit to the left and a tiny bit up to the right, and then just delay them out, and you can get a nice little widening thing. But sometimes you add a little bit too much and you're like, wait a minute, that just sounds freaky.
Yeah, in general, it's, of course it varies based on like what other stereo elements are happening around the vocal. But in general, it's something that you want to feel but not hear.
Like if you mute it.
Yeah, if you mute it, you are aware that you've taken it away. But if you pull it up too far, you get that kind of crazy, unnatural sort of thing, which can be cool on backgrounds if that's kind of the intent of like if the production is already in that kind of direction where it's very like harmonizer-esque, or it's just that kind of song. But like on a lead vocal, in general, and of course, like rules are made to be broken a little bit, but yeah, in general, it's something that you feel, but you don't explicitly hear.
If you want to capture every nuance of a great performance in your studio, then you're going to need to start with a microphone that is crafted with great care and attention to detail. JZ Mics in Riga, Latvia designs amazing sounding microphones that are handcrafted with jeweler's precision to bring you incredible detail in your recordings. At the heart of JZ microphones is the unique golden drop capsule design, which uses a lighter, faster diaphragm that delivers great clarity and fidelity while avoiding distracting colorations and distortions. This is my voice right now on the new Amethyst microphone with Class A discrete amplifier circuitry, extremely low self-noise, and advanced built-in shock mount technology to bring an expensive sound to your studio for an affordable price. JZ offers a 5-year warranty, free shipping to the US, and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Plus, for a limited time, you can use the coupon code ROCKSTARS to get 50% off the Amethyst microphone at jzmic.com. During the height of record making, Tom Dowd, Muscle Shoals, Stax Studios, Ardent Studios, and the New York City record plant all turned to one company to build their consoles. That company is now Spectra 1964, carried on today through Bill Cheney and Jim Romney. The extremely stable, high-speed circuit design of the 101 amplifier provides unequaled headroom, low noise, and linear output irrespective of transient audio peaks, giving you cleaner, punchier, dynamic recordings. Spectra 1964 brings you the sound of ZZ Top, Aerosmith, Bruce Springsteen, King Crimson, John Lennon, and so many more. Created by the missile engineers who were central in rolling out the systems that protected the free world for over half a century, Spectra 1964 literally brings rocket science to your studio. With the STX 600 mic pre with built-in comp limiter, full-frequency passive BBDI, and C610 dedicated comp limiter, start making records that last a lifetime at Spectra1964.com. Because one of the questions I had for you was about Malo Trevejo, and the background vocals are really like they have this wide sheen kind of quality to them, and I wondered if you wanted to talk more about some good tricks for creating that kind of sound. Just what are some things we can get away with the background vocals that we can't get away with the lead vocals?
I think that you can be a little more effects heavy as far as the time-based stuff on them. Again, a lot of this is based on the context of the song and the way that the vocals are presented to you, like before you're mixing it, if you're talking about just the mixing side in particular.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a lot of it is it's the sense of space of the lead and the backgrounds relative to each other. You know, it's kind of like how well they fit nice in context, because I think a lot of mixing can sometimes be very like frequency focused, and there's an element of depth as well. I think like creating the depth in a mix is something that's a little more subtle, and it is frequency dependent, but it's also like the relationships between the elements, you know, like the relationship between a kick, a snare, and a lead vocal, I would consider hugely important.
Yeah.
To give you the sense of space on a song. And I think the background and lead have like a similar relationship. And it of course it depends on the song, because some background vocals just on a production level before you get them or something like that are very forward. But a lot of background vocals tend to be panned out in stereo. And so there's certain things you can do to manipulate like wideness and general imaging of that stuff to kind of give space for the lead vocal in the center. And so I think you can be a little more, sometimes you can be a little more liberal with the time-based effects so that you can give a relative sense of space between the lead and the background. Not so much to say that you can just like crank the effects like crazy on backgrounds relative to the lead, but it's more so focusing on that relationship between the two, because that is what in some senses creates the space.
What can you think of a couple of examples of those tricks you can do to widen them out and make room for the lead?
I mean, honestly, doublers just in general. I mean, even just the waves doubler with if you take out the center, like there's that little switch where you can take out the center on the waves doubler, or like Sound Toys. I know there's like the micro shift. There's a few, I think they have an H3000 preset. And I mean, there's plenty of doubler plugins, but just trying doublers and EQs in general can be a good trick to kind of create some space. But again, a lot of it depends on the song and the kind of background stack you have. Other things you can do is just, it seems overly simple, but just level in general. Just the relationship of the level of the background. Or this gets a little more, I guess, musically technical, but sometimes you have a song that's in a certain key, and maybe there's a background stack where the background vocalist is singing like a third, or there's like a tonic or something like that maybe is being accentuated in the backgrounds, and maybe the lead vocalist is singing a similar note. This isn't something that you're like consciously thinking about when you're mixing, but if you were just to maybe analyze it after the fact, there are ways with like EQ where you can, because if you just replace the word frequencies with the notes, it's the same thing, right?
Right.
So if you have maybe a vocalist or a background stack that's singing like an A major chord with a seventh or something, and then the vocalist is singing a melody that has like a fifth or a third in it, sometimes you can pop out certain notes and then take away other notes in the background stack that kind of help the lead vocalist's melody project. So of course, like this is all, it's like a moving picture. So like I'm kind of isolating a moment here, and it's not like I would sit there with like a keyboard with a frequency chart and be like, oh, well, looks like the background stack in this measure is singing this note, so let me EQ that away. Like that's not as technical as I'm talking about. Yeah. But there's ways that you can kind of, on a feel level, enhance certain harmonics that give the lead space and then make the backgrounds feel more in the back.
Interesting. So like if the background vocals are singing the same note as the lead, that can mask the lead a little bit in that moment.
Yeah. And so it's not so, because like when you isolate it, it kind of like assumes like, well, if I EQ this note, then there will be space for this thing. And the song is constantly moving. And so like elements are coming in and out at different times. So it's kind of, it's weird to isolate just like a singular thing. But if you EQ like a background stack, you can really get certain notes to either, you can really EQ the notes of a background stack, and you can kind of like get certain harmonics to, And I don't mean to like, it's not to say that you need to know music theory to kind of like pop those notes out. But if you have like a lead and a background and they're happening at the same time, the EQ decisions that you make on the lead can either like mask or enhance the harmonics of the backgrounds and like vice versa. Mm-hmm. So certain EQ decisions that you make really affect the like harmonic content of the backgrounds, and the harmonic content that's happening relative to the lead at the same time at a given moment can really give you a sense of space. So that, because, you know, a lot of times the vocals seem very like on top of each other. And there isn't really that sense of depth. And so a lot of like harmonic EQ can really help you as far as separating like the depth of those two elements, because they kind of live in the same space at certain moments. And then the combination of like level and EQ can really give you that kind of sense of space, because you only have so much space to work with.
Well, it's just a great takeaway just to be reminded that EQ is also affecting note choice, you know, and stuff, which is cool.
Oh yeah, it's musical. Like a cool trick to try is if you take I think like just any like a sine wave or some sort of source of your choice, and then you take an EQ and then you just notch. You do a very, very tight notch and you kind of sweep from low to high. You'll actually hear the notes pop out. So if you sweep like a notch EQ, and you can try it, just do like a band pass, and it's just like a really heavy notch, and just kind of sweep from low to high on a source. If you do it slowly, you'll actually hear the notes start to pop out, like in the
this is band
like the
pass
harmonic
boost
series
or a cut.
Or I mean like just do like a really heavy notch and boost and kind of just like filter out everything else, just to isolate that space and then kind of sweep it. If you do that, basically like the harmonic series will pop out. So you can hear things like I think it's like an A major chord to start. I'm not super fluent on the notes. I have it somewhere, but it's like an A will pop out, and then you sweep a little bit, and it'll be very clear. Like it'll almost be like someone playing it if you do it right.
Remember when you would take the plastic tubing and you go outside and you start whipping it around in the air and you start getting those harmonic notes? It goes like,
yeah, exactly.
It's probably similar to that, I imagine.
It is, yeah. And if you sweep, eventually you will actually hear like the very specific notes pop out. And so having your low end, like EQ wise on a source, be harmonically sound really like lines up everything as far as the top. And I think that's a big part of that in general.
Okay, so my next question is still about vocals, but I wanted to ask you more of a general thing. So like when you're choosing a microphone for a singer, whether it's Lizzo or Tinashe, you know, with a powerful voice like that, what tips do you have for choosing the best vocal mic for a singer like that? And is there a process or a smart way to go about doing this? Do we have to know before we start, or is there a discovery process that we should be allowing ourselves?
If I'm being totally honest, a lot of it just depends on what's in the room that day. These days with how people are working, it's very often that you just walk into a room with a U87. So for me personally, a lot of times you don't have time to experiment so much. And so it's really just a lot of making it work with what you have. I think if you really know what you're doing, you can make pretty much anyone sound good on a SM7 or a U87. Or I mean, there's a certain threshold of quality that I would definitely prefer or like to have. But I think like once you have a U87 in the room or something, that's kind of a Swiss Army knife. Like it may not be the absolute best microphone that you could possibly have for that vocalist on a given day, but it will 100% work.
Okay.
And so for me, I'm a lot more utilitarian, I guess. It depends on the situation you're in, but oftentimes just with the way people are working and more importantly, the pace, you don't have a lot of time to sit there and think to yourself like, oh, hey, why don't we try a U47, like a FET versus a tube with this, you know, like this V7, like this original, is it V14, V17?
Well, let's see. I have
tube.
Oh yeah, I have a
tube name
U67 with the I forgot the V14 in it. I think
it's 14, right? Yeah. Sorry, I'm not the most tube fluent. But for me, like I'm much more so of of the thought where I'm going to use what's in the room to get the results that I need to have. And a lot of times I'm not in a situation where I can experiment just with the way that people are working these days. Yeah. You just kind of walk into a room and they have what they have. But just me, honestly, if you give me a U87 and a Neve, I'm good.
All right, that's good. That's a good enough takeaway for me. It's like Rockstars, get a U87, then you're covered.
Yeah, that's really all. But I'll be honest though, like if you can't afford a U87, which is super understandable and reasonable considering the cost of that guy, an SM7, you'd be amazed at what you can do with an SM7.
I agree.
Even a handheld SM7. That's one of my favorite mics, just in general.
What about mic pre's? How important do you think it is to have a variety of mic preamps? I mean, you talked about the 1073, which is a great one to have, but are there times where you're like, thank God we had this super clean, pristine mic preamp for this particular case?
If I'm being completely honest, I'm a 1073 guy through and through. Great. So if I have one of those, I'm good.
All right, there you go. We like simple takeaways.
Yeah, I'm just like, of course, there's different tastes and different flavors. And for me, it's a lot more, which one do you know best? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it has to do, it's not so much that it's the absolute best possible option for a given vocalist on a given day in a given room. It's just, I'm extremely familiar with that equipment. Right. And the familiarity kind of, it helps me work quickly and efficiently. And I know exactly what I'm going to get. And that to me, as an engineer personally, is more important.
Yeah.
Because like, if I can get it done, it's not to say that it's not to approach it as in like, I can fix it later. That's not what I mean. But I know exactly what a 1073 is going to do on a vocalist at like a specific range with a specific mic kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so for me personally, like if you give me a 1073 and a microphone, I'm good. Like I'll take a 57 with a 1073 over a lot of microphones with a different pre personally.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think the pre is super important. I think I will say like a lot of people think, hey, like if I buy a U87 and I plug it into my Focusrite interface or something like that, it will sound like a certain way. And don't get me wrong, that's better than plugging in maybe a not so great mic into that interface. But for me, the pre is the first thing I'd buy.
Yeah.
Like if you're, like if you get like, if I was in a hypothetical situation where I could have a bad pre and like a U87 or a 1073 and a 57, I'd probably pick the 1073 and the 57.
I was amazed when I first heard a 57 through a 1073, just how good it sounded.
It's amazing how much the pre makes. Well, because it's your most crucial gain stage.
Yeah.
Because like the millivolt signal that you're getting from the capsule of the microphone, either on the dynamic sense, like physically the coil moving back and forth, creating the millivolt signal, or the condenser or ribbon, just like whatever is creating that millivolt signal, whichever mechanism of microphone that you have on a given day, that the highest bump that you're going to have on a gain stage level is that millivolt signal to line level, just like getting it to line level. And so that gain stage is crucially important because once you're past that gain stage, you're working at line level all the way until the speakers. So. Cool.
Well, let's see. Another thing, we mentioned at the beginning of this that I gave a thanks to Gabe White over at Whisper Room for making the introduction.
By the way,
he's awesome.
Yeah.
Are you using so Whisper Room is a really cool ISO booth that you could use for recording? I know sometimes people use it for rehearsing, different variations. Is that something that you've actually used yourself?
Yeah, I actually have one. I have like one of the double walled Whisper Rooms. I think it's a 6x4. I've had it for a long time at this point. I think originally, I'm unsure exactly, but it was like, I heard that I think the basement of Disneyland, where like a lot of the vocalists kind of rehearse before they go up and become magical performers or something like that. I think they used to use them like on a rehearsal, like in a rehearsal, they use them for rehearsals basically, like in there.
Because it's an ISO room, ISO booth.
Yeah, essentially it's an ISO booth. Yeah. I used to use it when I was in an apartment still. It was very random. I had an apartment with a Whisper Room in it, but I would use it to practice saxophone because I play alto and tenor, mostly alto these days. It's definitely my secondary instrument. It's I'm not very good at it, but Yeah, it's great because, if you're in a like acoustically compromised situation where you can't be making outside noise at certain hours with neighbors or things like that, it's great. But it also works as a vocal booth as well down the line.
Right.
So yeah,
cool.
I do really enjoy my whisper room.
Well, wait, let's see. I was out at NAMM and Gabe and I did a little quick video where I just took my iPhone and we were talking outside, and then we walked into the whisper room. And watching the video, it's so funny because it's just the sound, the noise floor of everything outside just goes shoo. And
Like as soon as you close that door, it's just gone. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So it's a great solution for that kind of stuff. If you need and I guess like you said, you had it in an apartment, so you got a chance to see how portable it was going from one location to another.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and the construction is very straightforward. Yeah. Everything is pretty easy to assemble in general with those.
Okay, groovy, cool. All right, well, so more vocal questions. Background vocals. I wanted to ask you, because I really love stacking vocals. I love going for harmony parts or other counterpoint ideas with the singer. And then I might record them onto one track and then have tracks below it that are sort of panned left and right at lower volumes. And then I'll have them record that, and then I'll just pull that bit down, pull it down until we've filled up the stack. What about, what have you learned about getting backgrounds in these productions like Tinashe, where everything's very precise, How important is to line up things perfectly? Is there a lot of manipulation of vocals to get them right, or is it mostly just performing them exactly right? What thoughts do you want to share with us around the process of just getting really compelling stacks of backgrounds?
I think the first and foremost, the thing is performance. That matters way more than anything that I can do after the performance, to be honest. Mm-hmm. So I think, on a more technical level, as far as backgrounds go, you have your lead, and then you can do doubles, like one double, or two sets of doubles you can pan left, right, potentially a center, not a phantom center, but a center that you can kind of tuck that kind of doubles the center.
And then you can do harmonies. Can I ask you a question about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Is there a smart process for creating those doubles that we don't want to skip over? Do you go phrase by phrase and moment by moment with the singer for them to match, or is it more like they just sing the whole track and it's pretty close? How does that work?
It depends on the vocalist you're working with, but it would probably be by section. So let's say you cut the lead vocal of a verse, for example, and then maybe you comp it. So you have a lead that's comped, and then that's kind of the performance that you're referencing or working off of as far as timing. From there, you could cut a double. Most likely the person's cutting the entire verse at once as far as the double. Mm-hmm. And then they're doing that twice. And then you have a not an artificial one, an actual sung double that you can pan left and right and then center. And honestly, the variability in performance is good. Of course, you don't want the timing to be too loose. But if the person, again, it really helps when you have a great vocalist, but if the person is an excellent vocalist, they can, they have the skills to perform the double in a timing that's different on a timbre and a pitch level. Well, not pitch so much, but a timbre level and a phrasing level, but it's still within the bounds of timing as far as the lead. And you just pan them left, right, down the middle, and then people are doing harmonies that you can pan and level. But really, having nice background stacks, a lot of it comes down to just level.
It would be hard to describe in one sentence what gives records a legendary sound, but it would be easy to describe in 3 letters: API. For more than 50 years, API Audio has created large format consoles for world-class studios. Famous for co-founder Saul Walker's circuit designs and the original 2520 op-amp, the sound of API consoles is the sound of great music. API now brings that legendary sound to your home studio with the Box, a small format console featuring the famous API circuitry that is the perfect analog addition for your digital studio. The Box gives you 8 recording channels on the left with built-in mic pre's, high-pass filters, direct inputs, and custom loadable 500 module slots, and 16 summon strumming channels on the right, or mix using all 24 channels, including aux sends, inserts, and silky smooth faders, feeding a master section with classic API compression, switchable monitor sends, and a Pro TalkBack switch, and you've just upgraded your studio to legend status with The Box from APIaudio.com. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Rockstars of Drums will show you how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Want to start mastering your own records? Rockstars of Mastering walks you through exactly how I mastered my own record using nothing but plugins in PreSonus Studio One. Want to learn how to create a mix that doesn't suck but rocks instead? At Mixmaster Bundle, I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins so that you can have punchy, powerful drums, guitars that rock, bass you can feel, and a mix that is in your face. Plus, it's totally free as my way of saying thanks for listening. Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now and look for the clickable link in the show notes below. Is there anything that we should be feeding the singer in the headphones to make it easier for them to sing a double? Is there like a right and a wrong way to do that?
Oh, okay. Yeah. For me personally, in general, I'm writing faders a lot. So like sometimes, and this will all happen pretty quickly, but like, let's say you've comped the lead vocal. Oftentimes the person's in the room, so you have to do it very quickly. The lead's comp, they run into Puth or something like that, and then they're cutting doubles. The double that they're cutting, you sometimes ride up just so they can hear themselves a little more. And sometimes you can like ride down the lead vocal just a touch so that they can hear themselves while they're performing it. And then you just put it back when they're done kind of thing. And then I think what matters way more is the speed, though. You can't have the person wait. I think that's hugely important because that matters way more than me like making sure I mean, of course you want to have your pre set properly and you want to have like all of the technical things sound. But I think a lot of it comes down to having enough fluency because like for the artist personally, like they don't even understand. It's not that they don't understand, but to them, the computer doesn't exist.
Right.
Like the microphone and the pre don't exist. They're just singing. They have something in their head that they want to hear and they want it to come out of the speakers. And I think a lot of your job is to make all of those things disappear. Because they don't want to be thinking about like Pro Tools crashing or like auto tunes or plugins or any of that stuff. Not that they're not smart enough to understand that. You know, a lot of people are super experienced and have been in studios enough time where they do understand what's going on, but you're there to make those things go away so that the only thing that they're focusing on is the performance. And I think whatever you can do on a technical level to make those things disappear as much as possible so that the only thing the person's doing is performing is super important. I think that matters a lot more than like where I have things set. Because like, I think being technically sound in the sense of having your skill set like rock solid is hugely important to be able to run a session. But the purpose, like the applied purpose of having all of those technical skills is to be so fluent that it's effortless. Like everything is just happening.
Yeah.
Like I think an ideal session is just you're there as the operator and none of the people even really realize that like the computer or any of the technical things exist at all because they're just making music in the room.
Well,
just like on a
I think that's encouraging. The unfortunate side of that is that I believe there's not really a shortcut. You kind of have to make mistakes on sessions early on so that you learn all these techniques so that you know how to be fluid, on a session.
Yeah, it does take a lot of it has to do with just very instant decisions and just having like the intuition to kind of like a lot of the experience just comes with knowing what you need to do in the room at that exact moment to get the thing that you need kind of thing. But I think something that maybe like to touch upon just because some engineers don't really think of it like this, a lot of what you're getting from the room is the performance and how everyone is feeling in the room. I think that's like a hugely important thing because to track a vocalist like in a space, and especially these days, it's not necessarily like going into going into like booked rooms and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Sometimes these spaces are personally set up, or people are like making songs in like it's like the LA version of home studios. They're still really nice kind of thing,
Yeah,
but
like
it's not
Billie
like
Eilish.
yeah, but you're not like going to like a commercial facility necessarily. So it's kind of the space that the artist is in is like a hugely important thing to be conscious of,
Right.
because there's a lot of like the artist is in a very like sensitive and vulnerable place when they're performing,
Yeah.
and they're essentially performing to you when you're recording them in some senses. And so I think being very aware of how where the artist's head is at, and kind of reading their mind as far as what they want, because the more creative people get, the less they communicate,
Mhm.
or maybe they don't communicate clearly because they have like a intent or something in their head that they're really trying to get across, and they're really trying to get down on like paper or canvas or like whatever visual you need for that. But you really don't want to be in the way.
Yeah.
Like everything, like all your decisions are made to make everything as easy as possible and as quick as possible. And quick doesn't necessarily mean rushing. It just means getting from point A to point B with the least possible resistance. And so I think a lot of like my decisions personally in a room when I'm cutting have to do a lot with the feel of the room, where the artist's headspace is at, what I can do to facilitate that person kind of getting exactly what they need to say across. And that is, it requires technical skills, because you just need to be super fluent and know what's going on and be fast and be able to, fly things quickly. But it's also very much so like paying attention to what's happening. Like, what kind of song are we making today? What section of the song are we working on? What kind of performance are you maybe going to get out of the person that day? And what decisions can you make ahead of time to make all of those things as smooth as possible? And I feel like that's a lot of it. It's not so much there's some crazy complicated effects chain that I'm using to have these magical vocals. It's just I'm trying to put the person in a space where they can perform as honestly as possible with no resistance. And I think that yields like the best performance. And then from there, you can kind of craft those excellent performances that you've captured in the room to make something great on a song level.
Yeah.
And I think that matters way more than the technical stuff.
It's fascinating to me that there are times where you could be recording a singer and the appropriate move is to roll it, just give them 5 takes as fast as possible and don't say a word. And then you can work with another singer, even on the same session, where the appropriate thing to do was to stop them and say, come on into the control room as the next move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
every person is different.
Yeah.
And not just artists too. It's like everyone can be in a different mood on a different day. And then what kind of song you're working on also plays a big factor. And the other people in the room are very important to like how a session goes. And so like one person in a room with certain people might mean that you need to make certain decisions on your end to get that to go smoothly. And other times it might be even like the same group of people on a different day. There's just a lot of variables that happen, because like making music is a very people thing. It's people in a room trying to make the best song that they possibly can make. And that is the part that I think you need to pay the most attention to. Of course, you need to know things like bars and beats and like where the sections of the song are to like fly things quickly. But the reason you're doing that stuff is to keep the flow of the session going as smoothly as possible. And I think that part is way more important than anything that I'm doing on my end.
All right, let me ask you a quick question back to background stack. So when
sure.
quickly recording stuff and you got them, you've now got like 8 pairs or something, left, right, this. A lot of times in the interest of speed, I just do duplicate track in Pro Tools and I don't care what the name of it is now. Do you work that way where you just let it create goofy names for tracks, and then do you find it really important to go back and rename those tracks. Sometimes it gets really frustrating jumping around between, duplicating a track, doing a new take, then having a comp track on this particular vocal. And if you lose track, you can find yourself down, at the third chorus, and you go back and you're like, oh crap, where'd the first chorus go? You got any tips around that?
Yeah, I think, that's a good point to touch on, because like navigating the session, making your session navigatable, that I think does play into keeping the flow of a session going. So for me personally, like, I don't particularly care, at least on the cutting side of things, the specific name of the track. However, I will use the comments and the colors quite a bit. So I have a certain color scheme that I set up where I can look without actually having to read anything, and I know what the lead vocal is and which ones are the doubles and which ones are the backgrounds. And kind of as I'm cutting, like let's say I have a lead, and then I do like multiple takes via playlists, like on the lead, and then I comp that lead kind of thing. So the lead might be like one shade of a color. In my case, it's pink. So I have like it really doesn't matter what color you pick, as long as you know what the colors mean to you on an organizational level. So for me, I'll have like the lead be one shade of a color. And then the doubles, if there's like a left, right, and center, will be like another block. So I can see visually that those three vocals are a unit kind of thing. And then let's say maybe there's like an octave or something. I'll usually in the comments, I'll write like -8 VA, which would be like the musical symbol for like a lower octave, or a plus if it's an upper octave. Or you could just write like octave, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be that. For me, just visually, that makes more sense. So oftentimes I'll copy and paste in the comments, which you can do like while the vocal is cutting kind of thing. And I mean, obviously you have to be pretty careful and fluent, but you can, like, as you're cutting this, I'm usually organizing the session while I'm cutting it.
Right.
But again, a lot of it depends. Like, by the time the person is cutting, like, let's say you have a lead vocal and then they've cut a double and then another double that is intended to be panned left and right. By the time they're cutting the center vocal, the left and right are already panned. You just kind of do that in between them finishing the end of the last double and then them cutting the center, just so that they can hear it in the headphones already.
Yeah.
And then you kind of level things out like as you go, and you kind of create the blend. Again, you don't want to be too drastic and like drag things like way up and down, because that can kind of throw the performer off. But you are trying to, in some senses, not mix it, but you're trying to like create a blend as quickly as possible while the person is cutting like the various parts of that blend, so that they can just hear everything the way that it should sound.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am organizing the session like right off the bat. If you're in a situation where like they wrote the song in the room kind of thing, like I will already have markers set up to like define like the intro and the verse and the chorus and stuff. And oftentimes if you're in the writing session, you're in some senses creating the arrangement. You know, maybe after they write the pre-chorus, they go, oh, you know what? Like this post-chorus should be like, maybe we should take that out, or only have 2 bars instead of the 4 bars. And then maybe have a break that's 2 bars, so that by the time like it adds up the second time the post-chorus comes around, you have like the 2 bars and the 2 bars in the 2 different sections surrounding that chorus kind of change up to the timing on the arrangement, but then they add up to the 4, so that like the arrangement is even by the time you get to the second chorus. A lot of times those decisions are happening like pretty instantaneously. Like, oh, hey, let's cut the intro in half. And maybe originally when you were writing the song, you had like a chorus and a post-chorus. And then you're like, oh, you know what? Actually, the post-chorus should only come in the second time around. And so you're kind of like flying that stuff on an arrangement level. But once you have your arrangement markers lined up, for me on a vocal session level, yeah, a lot of it is color dependent. And I'm usually labeling things not in the banner tracks, like the track banner in Pro Tools, but I will often use the comments to tell me things.
Right.
But yeah, it's a lot of it's a combination of color organizing, so that by the time someone like late in the session, when you have like a pretty heavy amount of stacks, you go like, hey, I want just the high harmonies to be muted for the first half of these pre-chorus backgrounds. Like it's a move that you can make pretty easily just because you can navigate. Yeah, I think keeping your session organized, especially like as the vocal tracks start to add up, is important. Not even so much because you could always go back and organize them further later when you're like approaching it for a mix or something like that. But in the sense of cutting, it's more so keeping everything organized enough so that you can navigate as quickly as possible, so that when someone asks you to do either an arrangement decision or a creative decision, you can do it as quickly as possible without any resistance.
Yeah, and also so you don't accidentally later find yourself wondering if you might have just accidentally deleted something that you had worked on earlier in the song. That's one of the most frustrating things of all, is like you get to a point in a session and you've got the trust of the artist you're working with, and then all of a sudden you have this moment of doubt where you're like, oh fuck, what did I do something? Did I go over that first chorus track that we just sorted out? And you don't want to blow that moment with the artist.
Oh,
so
for sure.
try to avoid that stuff, Do you feel like the time you spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for a simple, straightforward, step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all your mixing struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover the proven step-by-step mix system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. Here are just some of the things students are saying about the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass.
Absolutely the most informative and helpful block of information and mentoring on the mix process I have ever been a part of. That was like sitting behind a mix engineer for years, watching and picking up tips along the way, condensed into a 6 to 7 hour lesson.
David P.
Thanks for a great session, dude. Just when I needed the inspiration.
John F.
A true feat of greatness. It was really life-changing and worth way more than I paid.
Mark R.
I've literally watched it 2 times at length, taken a plethora of notes, then coned back over some sections even more. You guys really knocked it out of the park on this one, and it was so incredibly eye-opening and useful immediately. What else can I say?
Shane J.
Amazing masterclass with Craig Alvin. My biggest takeaway was the concept of adding a subtle combination of distortion and compression to achieve a buttery cohesion in the sound. But there is so much more.
Steve K. Listen, I appreciate you listening to this podcast, and I know you're trying to make your best record ever. But when you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then you're ready for UltimateMixingMasterclass.com. What about comp tracks? Do you have any good tips for, you're punching in on a track, and then you get to the third chorus, and then all of a sudden now you're doing 4 different takes and comping it, or you just like the 4th take and you don't want to accidentally not keep, still be having the first chorus and second chorus on that track, just good advice for how you like to label your comp track, I guess.
Me personally, I usually have just the track that they're cutting on, and then I'm just playlisting for every take, and then I'll just split out into playlist view and then just comp. Mm-hmm. And usually I just label it comp at the end. Like maybe if it's, let's say you're going really quickly and you're on your 5th track and it's called like vocal .1 duplicate, like DUP 8 or something like that. I usually just do like a hyphen or a dot and a comp at the end, just so like I know that that's the comp track. Mm-hmm. And then you can also visually see it just because like you'll see the region cuts as opposed to just like the full cuts or like the 1 to 2 punches that you have. And then, I'm just soloing because like often I comp in the room before the backgrounds are cut. It's like we'll cut the lead first and then I'm comping and they're waiting for me.
Now, what about when the artist goes like, oh, I love the comp, but I want to punch in on this one line. What would be the move that you would do then with the comp?
I'd usually just have a second track and then I would mute that section that they're trying to punch in like while they're in the booth. And then they do the punch, and then I'll just either paste it up or have it on a separate track. Okay, but all of those tracks are being subgrouped, so like by the time, it's just like a way of visually organizing everything. But usually like, I guess, like example situation. Hey, I love the comp, and then you maybe go through a few takes, and you're like, I'm gonna just run into the booth and like cut this one line again. So then like in the time that the person is going from the room to the booth, you're already like cutting that section of the vocal, maybe duplicating the playlist, creating the 2 fades just so that there's nothing that throws the person off on a timing level, like on the in and out of the punch, arming the track. The pre should already, like everything should be ready to go so that by the time they're in the booth, you're already pressing record and they're already listening to it maybe with like 2 bars advance or a measure. It kind of depends on what the person's preference is. And then they cut that line and then you bring it in, and sometimes you need to do some like finessing or matching of level. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
So a nice thing about what you described is while the artist is on the mic, they're going to hear the recorded voice on the track that they're trying to fix, and they're still going to hear their voice right now on the mic on this new track. And
correct,
so they'll hear themselves singing over it, which is also an effect of using like a native system that maybe has the, the mixer window in between the interface and the DAW, like Universal Audio does and PreSonus and ones like that. So that is kind of a cool thing. When I use HDX in my studio, I know what's going on if I'm going to go into auto punch mode, because I'm used to tape machines too, where it's like, the singer's like, you don't hear yourself until we punch in. But I realize it does sometimes throw off the singer. They're like, I don't hear my voice, or it makes it hard for them to find the pitch and everything too.
Yeah, me personally, like they should always be hearing themselves. That's just like my general philosophy. So I'll pretty much always split it onto a separate track that has its own input monitor, because that way that person can like, sometimes the vocalist will want to sing the preceding line to the punch so that they can like lead up to it. And they definitely do want to hear themselves so that they can hear like their approach note.
Yeah, I like that, man. See, you didn't even know that was a ninja trick you needed to share with us until I dug into it.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was because my assumption is that the person should always hear themselves.
Yeah, it's great.
Like
great
even
takeaway.
when they're having a conversation, like I always have a track that's armed so that they can hear themselves.
Yeah.
Like even if they're making a decision in the room, because like it just keeps that, you want to make them feel like it's a conversation and that like they're not, you don't, in my general rule is like, you don't want to make the person feel isolated.
Right.
So talkback etiquette, I think, is super important.
Talkback etiquette.
Something as simple as just being like, oh yeah, no problem. Or like, oh, sounds great. Like it's just the little things on talkback where like my favorite is to have talkback on a foot pedal so that my hands don't have to leave the keyboard and mouse while I'm having the conversation with them. Obviously, sometimes you walk into a room and you don't have that luxury. But if it's a setup that I make, because like I use a Crane Song, like an Avocet, and there's an accessory port that is like a multi-pin connector, and you can actually if you go into the manual, you can assign the pins. I didn't make the cable personally; I'm not that good, but I had someone look at the accessory port, and there is an option to have a foot switch talkback, and that is extremely helpful because you can have your foot depress the thing so you can talk to the person while you're also coloring tracks or maybe doing fades. And a lot of that stuff is happening at the same time.
Yeah, that's cool, man. A lot of times I just leave my talkback switch down, but then the negative part about that is then I'm like, I hope it's not putting a bunch of noise in the headphones, or, I've got to remind people, hey guys, keep it down. Talkback's on in the studio.
Yeah, I find that like oftentimes like when I have talkback on, there are people having like a conversation or hanging out, writers or producers or something in the back. So yeah, I do want to be able to switch it on and off because like that'll kind of mess up the vocalist on a monitoring level, just like in my personal situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do really like having it on foot switch because there's a lot of things like you can, in the time, it's weird to think of it like in these like pockets of time, but in the time that you talk to an artist and go like, oh yeah, no problem. Like I can turn the doubles down and add a little bit more delay to like the backgrounds, and that entire conversation, I could have already like done a crossfade, done like multiple edits, nudged a vocal, colored like an entire stack of octaves and harmonies, like track arranged. Like there's so many things that you can do with your hands in those pockets of time that if I had to press a button to do that, you just lose a lot.
Yeah.
And then it's stuff that you'd have to do later. Yeah, just like that one conversation, I could have already panned the doubles and turned them down and like leveled out like a harmony, which I could then only like ride in like a minutia level to kind of get to the right spot. And then color track. There's just a lot of things that you can do in that space.
That's
that
cool,
can
man.
kind of keep the session smooth.
That's cool. I have the Dangerous monitor controller. I guess it's the Monitor ST is what it is.
Oh,
and
yeah. Familiar.
It does have a jack in the back. And I made one of those buttons like the morphine buttons in the hospital or something. I have one of those kind. And I didn't even think about it. Like it would have been perfect to just make a foot switch for the control, for the mix position. So very cool.
Yeah, TalkBack on foot switch, I highly recommend. It is super helpful.
Good takeaway. Well, great stuff, man. You've shared a bunch of great tips on vocal recording, and we really appreciate that. Let's go to one of our closing questions here. And this one's hypothetical. This one is, we're going to take the Wayback Studio machine, and you're just going to get a chance to go back and find young Ike and say, listen, young Ike, I know you want to be a rock star of the studio one day. Here's the single most important thing you need to know so that you can be a rock star of the studio. What advice would you like to go back and give yourself if you could?
That is an excellent question.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
It is a tough one. I would say that that's tricky. That's a tricky question. I think your skill set is your most important asset. Like nothing matters more than your skills at the end of the day. Don't get me wrong, like music business, entertainment business, like there's a lot of other factors that are important to being in like a certain position or getting yourself to a certain like professional level. There's a lot of politics. There's a lot of people skills that you need to have. There's like a business side to everything. But at the end of the day, you have to be technically sound. Like your technique has to be on point. It's kind of like to be not to call myself this, but like to be at a high level. Nothing really, there's no shortcuts to that. I think you really have to always stay curious. Like if you think you know enough, you are wrong. You are wrong. You are absolutely wrong. Like you have to always stay curious.
That's why you start a podcast and interview 250 people about making better records.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you'll learn a lot, get a lot of tips. But yeah, I think being technically sound is super important. Like there is no substitute for putting the work in to get the skill set.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people will, like, let's say you look at a concert pianist, right? And they can play, piano pieces that you can't even, like, when you see someone play on that level, you just kind of think to yourself, like, wow, that's like magic. Like my hands can't do that. There's no way that I would ever be able to do that. And then you realize that person they probably play piano every single day for 8 hours a day since they were 5 years old. And if you do that for 20 years, you're probably going to be really good at piano. Like none of this stuff is magic. It's not like someone wakes up and is just magically a great engineer or a great producer or a lyricist. Of course, there's some natural talent that's involved, and some people have more of an affinity to things than others. But at the end of the day, what really gets you to that top percent is just work. It's just a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Like you don't just, if you work on engineering every single day for 8 hours a day, you will get good at it. It would be weird if you weren't good at it after spending that much time doing it. And there is no substitute for that.
Cool thing about it too is that these days when somebody starts out, they have immediate access to a lot of the same tools that the professionals do through computer, Pro Tools, plugins, DAW, whatever it is. And then now we also know that all we got to do is go get a U87 and a 1073 mic pre.
Oh, you're good. Yeah.
And we're good. But I mean, it's just, all the stuff that you described about your skill set and what sets you apart and allows you to work with such a high level of talent is these things that just take, just speed on Pro Tools, color coding, making sure that the signal flow, making sure the session flow is perfect so that it doesn't, as Richard Dodd said on the podcast, so that you just simply don't get in the way of the music being created.
Oh yeah. That is the most important part, is just understanding that you're in a room with musicians. Something I would just suggest in general to anyone out there in general is if you are trying to work in music, definitely pick up an instrument. You don't have to be good at it. Again, you don't need to be like a super fluent with music theory or like that technical of a level of music, but understanding how songs works is super important. Not only just because of the work you do, like on a technical level, like bars and beats and flying choruses and like things on the grid and timing and time signatures. You know, the amount of people out there who, if I threw them a song in 6/8, they wouldn't know what to do in Pro Tools is kind of scary. Just because of the subdivisions are different. Like there are so many people out there who don't know how to deal with like a measure of 2/2. Like if you have like some chorus and then you have like a bar, like just 2 beats before the next section drops in, like how do you handle that in Pro Tools? A lot of people
I just make it up every time.
Yeah.
I don't do it enough to memorize all the button moves, but I know that I can figure it out every time, you know. Change
if you
time
can get it done,
whatever.
If you can get it done, that's the most important part.
Yeah. But there is always that struggle of, is this 3/4 or is it 6/8?
Well, I mean, as if you're in 3/4, it's subdivided correctly. But you know, if you're in 4/4, trying to do 6/8 with like quarter notes and stuff, it's
that's a challenge.
Yeah. Well, you do a click track, and all of a sudden, it's like emphasizing like the bars incorrectly and stuff like that, and that'll throw someone off. I'm not saying this happens super commonly because almost everything's in common time these days, but it's just there's little musical skills that I think a lot of people focus on technical stuff and understanding the music, not to a point where you're a crazy good guitarist or something like that, but just enough to communicate with the people in the room is important, super important.
Yeah, totally.
Because you're dealing with musicians at the end of the day, and being able to communicate with musicians in the room helps the flow of the session, and it also helps their trust in you. Like a lot of people use mixed in key. Like I'm trained enough where I can hear the keys. That's a big one. Like, you know, maybe you're setting an autotune for people to write, and then there's maybe like an accidental that's included, like a leading tone or some sort of extra note that they want to catch. And I mean, a lot of times mixing key messes up. So like if you try to throw a song into mixing key or something, and then you get the wrong key, and then right off the bat, the singer is hearing themselves singing the wrong scale, that just throws off a session.
You're right.
Of course, you can just you can go in and fix it later or figure it out and stuff, but just knowing that kind of thing off the bat, or being able to make those decisions instantaneously, you know, because like sometimes you'll have a song and then someone will sing a melody and then they realize that they just like want an extra note, you know, for an accidental, and just being able to do that kind of like understanding notes enough and the plugin that you're using to like immediately get to that thing so that that person can hear what they need to hear to like continue moving forward in the session. That kind of knowledge is super important. And I think a lot of people who train technically kind of miss some of that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, awesome. Ike, thank you so much for being on Recording Studio Rockstars with us, dude. Just a total pleasure to hang out with you. And we've been going and going, so a good, long, solid show, but just tons and tons of great information and useful stuff for getting killer vocals in particular. Let the Rockstars know how they can go find you online. If they want to go check out more of your work or reach out to you and make their next hit record, where should they go?
I mean, you can reach me on my website, which is just IkeSchultz.com. And then I'm also on Instagram, or the IG, or the Insta, as the kids say.
The IS on IG?
Yeah, sure. But yeah, you can reach me on both of those. And yeah, I'd be happy to get back to you.
Awesome, dude. Well, thanks so much. And then Rockstars, a reminder that we've got links to Ike's amazing records that he's been making. I highly recommend you go listen to Phone and Tinashe and all the records in the video playlist in the show notes. So just click through. Ike, you rock, dude. I look forward to meeting you in person soon.
Oh, likewise. Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
All right, man. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Take it easy.
Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. And if you want more free content from Recording Studio Rockstars, all you have to do is go to rsrockstars.com/email. Again, that's rsrockstars.com/email to enter your name and email, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, podcast updates, and even free gear giveaways for your studio. Just look for the link in the show notes below. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our amazing sponsors who help make this episode possible. OWC, Jay-Z Microphones, PreSonus, Spectra 1964, and API Audio. You will find links to all these wonderful sponsors in our show notes. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They're going to help you make your best record ever. So thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.